For centuries, the legend of King Arthur has stirred imaginations, captured hearts, and inspired countless retellings. From medieval manuscripts to modern blockbusters, the story of a noble king, his valiant knights, and the mystical land of Camelot lives on. But was there ever a real King Arthur? Or is he nothing more than a beautiful fabrication, born from the fires of myth and history's shadows? Tonight, we journey into the past, beyond the legends, beyond the romances, to search for the real King Arthur. Through historical evidence, ancient texts, and archaeological discoveries, we attempt to separate fact from fiction in one of history's most enduring mysteries. This is the search for the real King Arthur. The origins of the Arthurian legend are as elusive as the man himself. Though Arthur's name now echoes through the ages, his story was not always so widely known. The earliest written references to Arthur are scattered and sparse. He appears briefly in a handful of Welsh poems, among them the 10th century Y Gododdin. Yet it wasn't until the 12th century that Arthur truly took his place in the annals of legend, thanks to a single ambitious author, Geoffrey of Monmouth. Geoffrey's Historia Regum Britanniae, or The History of the Kings of Britain, would become one of the medieval era's most influential works. Written around 1136 CE, it claimed to chronicle Britain's history from its founding by Trojan refugees to the Saxon invasions. Within its pages, Geoffrey introduced Arthur as a warrior king who unified the Britons against invading forces, wielding a magical sword and presiding over a noble court. But Geoffrey's account was as much fiction as history, blending folklore, myth, and political propaganda. He drew from existing oral traditions and Celtic legends, crafting a version of Arthur that reflected the medieval ideals of kingship and heroism. Soon, Arthur's tale would grow richer with embellishments. The love affair between Lancelot and Guinevere, the wizard Merlin, and the quest for the Holy Grail. But behind these romantic flourishes lay an unresolved question. Was any of it real? To understand Arthur's potential origins, we must look to Britain's dark and chaotic 5th and 6th centuries CE. After nearly 4 centuries of Roman rule, the legions withdrew from Britain in the early 5th century, leaving a vulnerable, fractured landscape. Without Rome's protection, Britain became a battleground. Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, invaded, while native Britons struggled to hold their ground. It was an age of upheaval, marked by tribal conflict, societal collapse, and desperate resistance. This turbulent period, sometimes called sub-Roman Britain, offers fertile ground for the birth of a folk hero. A war leader who rallied disparate tribes against encroaching enemies would have been a figure of immense significance. Some scholars believe Arthur may have been based on a real military leader or series of leaders from this time. A Romano-British warlord, perhaps, or a tribal king whose deeds were magnified by oral storytelling. Others suggest he is a composite of several historical figures. A 9th century Welsh monk named Nennius provides one of the earliest narrative references in Historia Brittonum, listing 12 battles fought by Arthur, including the famed Battle of Badon Hill. But the accuracy of Nennius' work remains hotly debated. The historical context is clear. Britain was a land in crisis, and in such times, legends are born. If Arthur existed, where did he rule? And where might he be buried? The search for Camelot, Arthur's legendary castle and court, has captivated archaeologists for decades. While many locations have been proposed, from Tintagel in Cornwall to Caerleon in Wales, one site continues to intrigue researchers: Cadbury Castle in Somerset, England. This Iron Age hill fort shows evidence of significant occupation during the 5th and 6th centuries. In the 1960s, archaeologist Leslie Alcock led an excavation here, uncovering fortifications and large timber halls that suggested a powerful leader once held court on the site. Local folklore long identified Cadbury Castle as Camelot, and Alcock's discoveries, though inconclusive, fueled speculation. Elsewhere, Tintagel Castle in Cornwall, traditionally linked to Arthur's birth, has yielded tantalizing finds. In 1998, the so-called Artignu stone, inscribed with a Latin inscription containing a name similar to Arthur, was discovered. While the connection remains circumstantial, it adds another layer to the enduring mystery. Other proposed locations include South Cadbury, Caerleon, and even areas in Scotland. Yet, despite extensive archaeological efforts, no definitive evidence of Arthur's existence has surfaced. His grave remains undiscovered, his court elusive. But perhaps, as some suggest, Arthur was never meant to be found. What makes Arthur so enduring, so captivating across centuries and cultures? The answer lies not in historical fact, but in what Arthur represents. Through medieval romances like Thomas Malory's La Morte d'Arthur, Arthur evolved into an emblem of chivalry, justice, and moral leadership. His court, with its ideals of equality and virtue, stood in stark contrast to the often brutal realities of medieval politics. In the Victorian era, Alfred Lord Tennyson's Idylls of the King reimagined Arthur as a flawed but noble ruler, reflecting contemporary anxieties about empire and morality. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Arthur's legend adapted once more, appearing in novels, films, and television series. From John Boorman's Excalibur to the BBC's Merlin, each retelling reshapes Arthur to fit the times. Arthur serves as a mirror, reflecting humanity's enduring fascination with leadership, destiny, and myth. He is every society's idealized hero, whether medieval king, tragic warrior, or mystical protector. Even now, modern scholars, writers, and archaeologists chase his elusive shadow. So, was there a real King Arthur? The evidence remains frustratingly incomplete. No grave marked Arthur, no court definitively called Camelot. But in a sense, Arthur's reality is beside the point. His legend, rooted in history's murky past, endures precisely because it refuses to be pinned down. It survives in stone ruins, ancient manuscripts, and the collective imagination. The search for Arthur is the search for the stories we tell ourselves, about heroism, about resistance, about the hope that in our darkest hours, a noble leader will rise. And perhaps that is the most powerful truth of all.